From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. I want to start with this today. Don't let the Iran war overwhelm you into thinking that this is just too big now. It's gotten beyond us. The events of the day, the worldwide consequences, it's just all too overwhelming. Our person by person, block by block, community by community resistance efforts just aren't adequate to meet this moment. The whole thing has just gotten too big for us. Please don't fall into that line of thinking. It's not true. Sure, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can be disappointed, you can be afraid. That's perfectly natural. We all are. But we can't let this stop our effort. Just the opposite. We have to dig in deeper. We have to yell louder. We have to commit. We have to end this madness. Also, it's all the more reason to reject once and for all the both-sidism of the media, the capitulation of the so-called centrists, the moderates who want to reach across the aisle, find common ground. It's all BS. This is the time for moral clarity and for action. We have to end the madness, meaning end the war, end this regime. We have to topple our regime. We need regime change in this country. So, just a short word of encouragement today. Well, the events in Iran have kicked a couple things off of my agenda that I wanted to talk to you about. Just to make sure you're aware. One of them is that Paramount has now won the bidding war, it looks like. Netflix has dropped out. So Paramount, Ellison and Son, i.e. MAGA, who already controls CBS, will now control CNN, HBO, and TikTok. Pretty much all of legacy media now is controlled by MAGA. We have state-sponsored media, a la Iran, a la North Korea, Russia. Not to that degree, yet, but well on the way, certainly on the path. Veteran producers and anchors are leaving CBS in defiance of the new editor-in-chief, Barry Weiss, who now, I guess, will be in charge of CNN as well. Because, of course, CNN, along with the others I mentioned, all fall under the umbrella of Warner Brothers Discovery, and Paramount Skydance are swallowing up Warner Brothers. Anderson Cooper, high-profile anchor, quit 60 Minutes in defiance of Barry Weiss and the MAGA takeover of CBS. Now we'll have to make the same decision regarding CNN, so we'll see what happens there. Because journalists have been directed to aim their coverage at a specific segment of the political audience, reminiscent of Jeff Bezos and his dictatorial mandates to the Washington Post editorial board. And it's not just the Ellison family, MAGA Larry and MAGA David Ellison. Other key financial partners, the new owners of Warner Brothers, include the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the Qatar Investment Authority, the Limad Holding Company, which is Abu Dhabi, and Affinity Partners, that's Jared Kushner and friends. Yeah, that's quite a lineup, isn't it? Yeah, that's the group that will now control CNN, HBO, and TikTok. Along with CBS, after ABC and NBC have already been compromised, hundreds of local stations, because of groups like Sinclair, and the other one I can't name in the moment, I forgot. 1,500 conservative radio stations. Now, this is all old media, but for the moment, still has massive influence over what people hear, read, and see. Yes, it's a dying media, but it's not dead yet. So I've heard some commentators say, oh, don't worry about it. Yeah, I don't agree at all. Especially when you include TikTok. Twitter, of course, already been subsumed by Elon Musk. Zuckerberg over Meta. So the entire media landscape now utterly compromised by MAGA, by state-approved media. The other story I feel very strongly about keeping on the front page is DHS, ICE. The raids continue without headlines. The conditions inside the concentration camps are brutal. We keep hearing new stories. We've learned that just since mid-September, emergency crews have been dispatched to Dilley Detention Center in Texas at least 11 times to treat children in medical distress. That there have been 911 calls about kids burning with fever, struggling to breathe. The calls coming from medical staff inside the facility that houses hundreds of immigrant children and their parents in South Texas. Children as young as 5, 6, 7 years old. Out-of-control fevers, struggling to breathe, several seizures. What the hell is going on? Reporters haven't yet been able to find out what happened after the ambulances arrived. We know about and talked about that 2-month-old suffering respiratory illness, nearly died, choking on his own vomit. And now we learn of a couple of deaths of men at the Dilley, Texas concentration camp. A man named Geraldo Lunas Campos died. The county medical examiner performed an autopsy and ruled homicide. And then when another man died at the same ICE facility, DHS didn't even call the local medical examiner. Instead, they moved his body to a nearby U.S. Army base. And that Army base is now flat out refusing to release the results of his autopsy. Senator Dick Durbin was able to get this information. In just the first 2 months of this year alone, 8 people have died in ICE custody. 911 logs are showing that ICE facilities are completely overwhelmed, ignoring basic human rights, and now moving a body to dodge a local homicide investigation. That's where we are with ICE right now. That's where we are with DHS and ICE. Yeah, we have to keep all of this on the front pages while we still have front pages. And most of all, we have to end this regime. End it. Continue with your resistance, whatever form that takes for you. Up your game if you can. And one last reminder, a handful, literally a handful of Republicans in Congress could end this today if they chose to. All it would take is a couple of dozen people in Congress with an R in front of their names to have an Ebenezer Scrooge moment and do the right thing. Yeah, this regime has to come down. Well, let's spend a little time in Iran. The whole region, the entire Middle East is screwed. People are still looking for reasons for this god-awful war. Israeli expansion has to be among the top reasons. They've already bombed and seized part of southern Lebanon, which has been in their sights forever in their Greater Israel project. Thousands of Lebanese already starting to flee to Syria, which is also part of the Greater Israel project. Grab some of their land. I don't know what the death toll is so far, but it's mostly civilians. Schools, hospitals, residential areas being bombed to smithereens. The State Department has already told U.S. citizens to leave more than a dozen Middle Eastern countries because they can't guarantee their safety. Just tell them to get out. I don't know how they're going to do that when airports are closed, when airspace is constricted, when there are bombs flying all over the place. This is just nuts. For no reason. And for 100 reasons, none of which make any sense. For the oil? To influence domestic politics? The Orange Menace and Netanyahu both have plenty of problems at home. To throw a little extra cash at the defense industry? They were already looking for ways to spend another $500 billion. Yeah, the defense budget finally reached that $1 trillion mark that they've been flirting with for years now. And as soon as it did, the Orange Menace proposed another $500 billion. They were just in the middle of debating how they could spend that. Well, I guess they found a way. So it's still early. I told you, my hope is that he'll chicken out, like he usually does. He always backs off. Threats, tariffs. That's my hope anyway. Certainly isn't looking that way so far in these early days. That shooting in Texas over the weekend, in Austin. I'm sure you heard about that, right? 2 or 3 dead, many wounded in Austin's nightlife district. Police killed the shooter. He was wearing clothes with an Iranian flag design and the words "property of Allah." And then Kristi Noem was testifying before the Senate Judiciary on Tuesday. Lindsey Graham actually brings up this case as an argument to restrict immigration. They think they're making this big point about protecting the homeland, which is exactly what they're not doing. It's been well documented that DHS under Kristi Noem and the Dodgy Boys made cuts in almost every department except for ICE and CBP. They transferred personnel from other departments. So DHS, in large part, has been hollowed out in order to put all their eggs in the deportation basket. So at a time when we really need to be on our toes, DHS has been weakened. The FBI has been weakened. Just days before the bombing of Iran, Kash Patel fired a whole bunch of Iranian experts in the FBI. Yeah, so FBI, DHS, let's pull resources from cybersecurity, from TSA, just at a time when Iranian terror cells might be activated. These people. We've already got dozens of nations involved, embassies being bombed. So far, the damage has been restricted to the Middle East region, but how long is that going to last? We know that Iran in the past has attempted cyber attacks, attacks on the grid, assassination attempts. There could be larger mass terror attacks, public transportation, large events. I mean, I don't mean to scare you, but these are just the facts. And we've got the Orange Clown Show in charge. Oh, God, and then there's this one. First reported by independent journalist Jonathan Larson, and then picked up by everybody else. A U.S. combat unit commander told non-commissioned officers that the war on Iran is part of God's divine plan, allegedly claiming President Donald Trump was anointed by Jesus to ignite Armageddon. The complaint filed with Military Religious Freedom Foundation is one of more than 110 logged within 48 hours from over 40 units across at least 30 installations. So according to this, what's it called? Military Religious Freedom Foundation, MRFF. According to them, service members are reporting, quote, unrestricted euphoria, unquote, among segments of the chain of command, portraying the assault on Iran as biblically sanctioned and tied to end times prophecy in the book of Revelation. The controversy unfolds as Secretary of War Crimes Pete Hegseth expands overt evangelical programming within the Pentagon, including prayer sessions and Bible studies aligned with staunch pro-Israel theology. Many U.S. commanders appear particularly enthused by the prospect of an intensely violent confrontation, emphasizing how much bloodshed they believe is necessary to align events with the fundamentalist Christian end times narrative. That's from the HuffPost. Jesus, Mother Mary and Joseph, these people. And then let's add a little more salt to the wound here. Marco Rubio briefed members of Congress earlier this week. And according to those in the room, Netanyahu told the Orange Menace, we're attacking Iran with or without you. But when we do attack, Iran is definitely going to retaliate, not against just us, but against you, against the United States embassies, military bases. I mean, whether you're with us or not. So, you see, you don't really have a choice, Bibi told the Orange Meat Puppet. You have to hit them first and knock them out because they're definitely going to hit you. Once we strike, they're going to strike both of us. So again, this is the Dr. Strangelove doctrine. Once you're in, you got to commit. In this scenario, Israel is General Ripper, who strikes first, and the Orange Menace is President Merkin Muffley, except Merkin Muffley handled it quite a bit better in his situation. So we had no choice? That's one hell of a reason to go to war. Because another world leader told you to? He told you had no choice? Can you imagine if Netanyahu had tried that BS on any other U.S. administration? On Joe Biden? On Barack Obama? On Bush and Cheney? How far do you think he would have got? You think he would have gotten away with that? Of course not. But his little sock puppet Trump? No problem. Secretary of War Crimes Pete Hegseth? He's going to object? No, he's in with the crazy Christian nationalists with the big old Crusaders tattoo on his chest. Marco Rubio? Come on. What a room full of weaklings and dopes. The whole gaggle of goons needs to be tossed out on their ears. Yes, the Iran war should absolutely result in regime change. This regime right here at home. But instead we've got this bizarre new world order, the spheres of influence that we've been talking about. The U.S. gets the Western Hemisphere, China gets all of Asia, Russia gets all of Europe, and now Israel joins the club. They get the entire Middle East. You may remember this starting with the Abraham Accords in the first Orange regime, when the Orange Menace and Netanyahu got together to bully and bribe all the smaller Gulf states into these paper agreements. But bullying and bribery is all it was. Gunboat diplomacy, tariffs, economic extortion. Why do you think Qatar gave him a plane? Why do you think Saudi Arabia gave Jared $2 billion? The list goes on. This is the New World Order. A handful of hegemonic powers, and everybody else can just dance to their tune. Might makes right. Yeah, some world we live in. It's 18th century imperialism, but now supercharged with artificial intelligence. Israel's attack on Gaza was a case study in this new form of warfare, using AI to identify targets, to build and send the drones like an army of flying monkeys. The orange meat puppet stands in front of the camera in his makeshift bunker at Mar-a-Lago and says about American combat deaths, "That's the way it is. That's what happens to suckers and losers." His words exactly, according to General John Kelly. Yeah. U.S. service members and fallen soldiers, suckers and losers. The Atlantic first reported that in 2020. John Kelly confirmed it a couple of years later. A couple times. I want to talk a little bit about language and a very specific turn that it seems to have taken recently. I'm not talking about the content of the language itself. I mean, of course they lie. They lie and they lie brazenly. Right now I'm talking about the style, the rhetoric being used by the American regime, especially from the Orange Menace himself or by his speechwriters. Not so much talking about the ad-libs right now. They haven't changed except they've just gotten more bizarre. But no, the official language coming out of the regime has just gotten over the top in its earnestness. It's sickeningly patriotic and flowery, filled with extreme images of good and evil. Have you noticed this? The style itself is almost as objectionable as the policy that it describes. It's a very specific kind of political language that's intentionally theatrical, almost religious. Well, almost. Sometimes overtly religious. And it's absolutely manipulative, emotionally, psychologically. Of course, the right wing, the conservatives, they've always been known for their wear-it-on-the-lapel patriotism, this performative patriotism. But it's on steroids these days. The hyper-patriotism, the grandiosity, the language just drenched in reverence for the flag and for the homeland and for the people. But it's just so glaringly, obviously inflated and performative. And the moral absolutism, again, this isn't new. Almost all politicians do it. Hell, I do it sometimes. Sometimes I feel so certain about something, I speak in absolute terms. But this has become a rule of their rhetoric. The entire world is painted in stark blacks and whites, heroes and villains. The United States is the beacon of the world, the savior, and of course it's all embodied in the Orange Menace, who's restored a fallen nation, because now, of course, we're the hottest nation on earth. What a bizarre word to use. The rhetorical overkill, every sentence inflated to mythic proportions. What used to be political talking points is now almost scripture to these people. I don't know, is anybody buying this? Is anyone else as offended as I am? This forced, syrupy earnestness that is way more rehearsed than it is heartfelt. And even before the bombing of Iran, depicting policy as epic battles, good versus evil, freedom versus tyranny. There again, I'll confess, my rhetoric sometimes slips into that area when I feel it's justified. In defense of my own rhetoric, I'd like to think that it matches what I believe, my actual passion. Otherwise, I wouldn't use it. I would never try to manipulate you. But who can listen to the likes of J.D. Maybelline Vance or Grinder Mike Johnson, and especially the Orange Menace himself? I bring this up because I really do feel this is an important component of our current situation. I don't think this is a side issue. I think it's central. Because there's no question that they're doing it. The question then becomes, well, how do we react to it? How does it make us feel, first of all? Because sometimes a skilled speaker, a skilled propagandist can get you. Steven Spielberg knows how to push your buttons. He knows how to manipulate you. A good film director or a theater artist knows how to do that. There's a time and a place, I suppose, for emotional manipulation in the arts. But we're talking about life and death decisions, crucial policies enacted by a government that is designed to be of, by, and for the people. But the victims of this manipulation are forced into certain responses. We're forced into a corner. Well, you're either going to be completely devoted to the speaker or outraged by the speaker. There's no in between. The propagandist doesn't allow nuance. The propagandist is forcing you into a camp, onto one or the other team. It's patronizing. It's disrespectful. It assumes that we'll be swept up by the language. We'll be ruled by our own emotions rather than the substance of the rhetoric. Again, whether we're on board or in violent opposition makes no difference to them. They're not really trying to persuade us. They know that they're making half the country, or 60% of the country, or 70% of the country hopping mad. How could they not know it? Well, the continuing debate around here is to what degree they're evil and to what degree they're stupid. I don't know. That question remains open. But this rhetoric, this over-the-top, earnest, maudlin, patriotic, pseudo-religious rhetoric, 100% designed to bypass critical thinking, to overwhelm the listener with this patriotic imagery, and mostly with fear. It's cloying, it's saccharine, it's so heavy-handedly heartfelt, it just becomes nauseating. And they've been doing this for a long time, but with the invasion of Iran, it's just exponentially worse. Pete Hegseth has a particular variation on this style. The angry killer, emitting glee over the whole idea of lethality, one of his favorite words. Of course, they renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War. That's exactly where they want to be, on the offensive. They want to be warriors, especially Christian warriors, because that's exactly what they are. That Crusades tattoo on Pete Hegseth's chest is no accident. The evangelicals who lay hands on the Orange Menace and stand over him and pray. The cross around Caroline Leavitt's neck. The open and unapologetic policy of Project 2025 to create a Christian nation. Yeah, these are sermons, whether it's the bombastic rhetoric of the Orange Menace, or the violent killer warrior rhetoric of Hegseth, or the demeaning, insulting rhetoric of Caroline Leavitt. the mocking, dismissive tone of Grinder Mike Johnson, the frat boy know-it-all J.D. Vance, the ghoulish, nihilistic Stephen Miller. They're all spitting out this grotesque turn of language that we just can't ignore. We've got to be very clear about what they're doing. We have to call it out. We have to monitor our own response. And most of all, we can't let them manipulate us. And the first step is to know what's happening, to be aware, to be conscious of it. So this emotional spectacle they're trying to parade in front of us doesn't make us helpless, captive spectators. And maybe the worst aspect of it all is the stolen valor. Because the embarrassingly over-the-top praise, the fetishism of the U.S. military, seems to force everyone, left, right, and center, into this non-negotiable position. You have to praise the military. It's pure good versus evil. Every cause is noble. They use military personnel as props. They're standing on the shoulders of the very people they send to their death. The solemn snap of a salute at a dignified transfer ceremony. Especially galling after the whole sucker and loser quote. Using this language, using these images to promote an illegal and immoral invasion, killing thousands of innocent people in their name. The most despicable aspect of the whole propaganda campaign. Their earnest pseudo-religious rhetoric. And that's not even to mention that it's all utter nonsense. When you get down to the actual message, what they're actually saying, none of it makes any damned sense. We talked about the reasons for the Iran war. There are dozens, none of which make any damn sense. They can't come up with one reason that makes sense. They've come up with dozens of reasons, but not a damn one makes the least bit of sense by any objective standard. Thanks for listening. This and all episodes can be heard at the website charlesburcell.com or on your favorite podcast platform. You can also hear us on our home radio station. That's River West Radio in Milwaukee. Follow us on Blue Sky and Substack. Peter Donalds wrote and performed our theme song. Oh, speaking of music, a quick reminder, don't forget to check out our new addition to the Charles Burcell Presents family of podcasts. It's a weekend program called We the People, if you haven't heard it yet. Yeah, check your feed every Saturday morning. It's We the People, songs of freedom, justice, and solidarity, a program dedicated to old and new protest songs, songs of social justice. We're having a great time putting it together, and I hope you like it. Okay, I love you. I'll see you out there.